All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to our webinar over at CopyPress. My name is Derek Miller. I'll be filling in for Dave Snyder. Dave is recovering from surgery right now, so he's not in the office, and I'm taking over the webinar today. If you want to give Dave some love, give him a shout out on Twitter at Dave Snyder. Or I know he also appreciate if you send some business over to CopyPress. I think he would prefer either of those options. So also on the webinar today, I have two of CopyPress's finest. We have Caroline Morris and Jennifer going to be on the podcast. So Caroline, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little about who you are, what you do at CopyPress, and why you're talking about headlines today.
Yeah, of course. My name is Caroline. I'm the copy manager here. I've been working here for about 2.5 years, and the entire time I've been working on generating titles and headlines for our clients.
Awesome, awesome. And Jennifer, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you're talking about headlines today.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, and I'm one of our client strategists. I work with the clients day to day with their campaigns, as well as running the blog. So I'm
She's seen both sides of it, yeah.
Blog, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So today we're talking about creating effective titles and headlines, which is it's an integral part of the content process. Before our last webinar, we talked about how to create incredible infographics. Now we're going to talk about the copy side of things. And if you want to check out a lot of the content that's coming from an ebook that we're launching tomorrow. So it's going to be covering very similar stuff that we're going to talk about today, you know, how to create effective headlines and titles, what you need to be looking for, how to improve your process, so on and so forth. You can find the ebook on CopyPress, or you can get it in our newsletter. So if you're not a part of our newsletter, go to our blog, sign up today. We'll be dropping you guys weekly newsletters with some of the content we produce and our future webinars. So that's enough from the plug side of things. Let's get into the webinar a little bit. So this is actually our first time doing a webinar, so bear with us. We're testing it out, and we're going to learn as we go. We hope you guys enjoy some of the content we're going to talk about. You can also ask questions along through the software, and we'll do our best to answer those at the end. Anything that we don't get to, you know, we'll consider it for future ebooks and webinars and things like that. So let's get down to it. The next slide on here we're going to talk about is why headlines are important. Okay, I know I used to deal with clients, and headlines were never a big part of their process. They were concerned with the content side of things, but headlines are extremely important, and it's something that you guys definitely shouldn't be neglecting. They really frame the expectations from the reader side of thing, and a recent study showed that 90% of web users click through based on the headlines, and of those that do click through, only 20% really read past the headlines. So it's a really integral part of your content. It's something you guys definitely shouldn't neglect. And Jen, I know you deal a lot with clients. Can you tell us a little bit about the headlines and titles, like the process from the client side of things, and whether or not our clients in particular really care about headlines?
Yeah, of course. So this is kind of mixed with a bunch of my clients. Some are very particular about their topics and headlines, and they do, you know, once we provide the topics for the clients, this is a chance that they can review their past work, see if this is relating to anything else they've done, go through their Google Analytics, go through their keyword research, and see if this is actually a title and topic that you really want to create content around. So we do have quite a few clients that are very specific. They review everything, which is great, and they're probably the ones that are doing performing a little better. And then we have a few clients that are, again, like you said, more worried about the content, and they want it done quick. They want it now. So I send over the ideas. 5 minutes later, they get approved.
Yeah.
So you kind of know they're not really looking, but it is a great chance for you once we get our input to you to review everything and see, you know, where you can improve on the headline. If this is something you really want to do, add in any SEO and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. The headline really frames, like I said, the expectations from the user who's landed on the page. So it's extremely important. And it's definitely something that, having some experience on the client side, I know that they don't take it as serious as they really should. So it's definitely, if you guys are listening out there and you have clients, really hone in on them, spending time and making a ton of the considerations needed when you're doing the headlines. So now that we're going to dive into a little bit about the headlines, I think it's important that we get a foundation before we really go into anything deeper when it comes to headlines. So we're going to dive into some of the basic and they're really simple concepts as they relate to headlines, but they're definitely something to consider whenever you are creating your headlines. They're really important. Even if it's not an exercise that you do for every time you create headlines, it's definitely something you should be considering. So the first one, Caroline, can you tell us a little bit about the J School 5 W's and H? What is that?
That's definitely going to be one of the most basic things that you learn when it comes to journalism and writing articles. You really want to figure out your who, what, when, where, why, and how. As it relates to headlines and titles, you just really want to figure out which one of those things you want to address the most in your article, and then you can frame your headline around that and go in that direction for the entire article.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we just asked the poll out there, when you're creating your headlines, is this something you do at the beginning of the process? Is it something you do at the end, in the middle, so on and so forth? What do you think? Like, is the J School 5 W's that like what everyone should be doing when they start, or, when should they be thinking about this, or do they even need to think about it?
It really depends. I think it can be a helpful exercise, and I think that it might be something that you want to review both before you start an article and then revisit it after you're done.
Definitely.
To make sure that you really are going in that direction so the topic hits what the article is actually about.
Perfect. And we actually have an example here. So using the title that we did for our ebook, Creating Effective Titles and Headlines, a how-to guide, using the 5 W's and H, you can really get an idea for what the article is going to be covering and what the ebook is going to be talking about. So why great titles and headlines are important definitely gives you a different perspective, right, than creating effective titles and headlines, a how-to guide. So just looking at a few of the examples that we have here, you can definitely see that the W's and the H's really do lead the user to think that they're going to get a different type of article. The next one that we have on the basics, the foundations, are the 4 U's. So Caroline, coming to you again, what are the 4 U's? Why do the listeners even need to care about this?
This is something that it's going to be a little bit more fun to work with. It's not as basic. The 4 U's, you're going to look at unique, ultra-specific, urgency, and useful. You're typically not going to be able to hit all 4 of those in the same headline or title, but it really helps you drive it in a more interesting direction when you use one of these.
So this is like a step up after the W's and the H's, right? You got
Yep.
let's make this headline a little bit more exciting, more engaging for our users.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We have a couple examples too. You want to walk through some of these examples, kind of explain what's happening?
Yeah, of course. So with unique, if we're talking about, so we've got a water bottle here, and
exciting stuff.
Yeah, super exciting. So one way to make it unique, this is the water bottle you want during the zombie apocalypse. Just kind of reach a niche market with that, and then
that's actually something you would like, right? You would read
totally,
that.
Absolutely. Ultra specific. This condensation creating water bottle will be your bike companion for life. So you're really thinking about the audience with that one. Urgency, get this new water bottle before your next run or you won't fully quench your thirst.
I've seen those in my inbox. That sounds like an email
yeah,
subject
it's like a clickbait type of thing.
Yeah.
And then useful, this new water bottle saves bikers hundreds of dollars annually. So that's going to be a little bit more practical.
Yeah, definitely. So, after looking over these, you can definitely see that if you're creating an article using any of these U's, you're definitely looking for some sort of like action or some sort of like specific reaction to your content, right? So ultra specific, this is if you're maybe a niche vertical and you're trying to create content, it's really important to hone in on your target audience rather than casting this like large net out there, right? So that content is extremely specific to a target audience. And then you have like the other ones like urgency. I see that a ton on my Facebook pages, right? They're just trying to get you to click through there, hopefully generate some sort of like action in return. So these are all really important like standards to follow, not necessarily for every single headline, but as you're thinking about what sort of actions you want the readers to do when they land on your page, who your target audiences are, those are all the questions that these headlines help you resolve. So moving into the next section of the webinar, we're going to talk about how you actually take what we told you and do the exact opposite, right? So you're breaking the rules here. So, we've talked about the standards, right? The W's, the H's, the U's, all the alphabet. And now we're going to kind of look at like some different ways to take those and go a different direction, don't use the hows, don't use the call to actions, things like that. So a lot of the ways that you can do that are using tools and formulas. And one of the tools that I think is really important from someone who I also create a ton of content as well. So this is actually a tool that I use as a way for me not to just generate titles and headlines for the content I'm creating right then, but maybe it's something I want to create down the road, or maybe it sparks some different ideas. So that tool is the SVO, style topic ideation. So Caroline, can you talk to us a little bit about the SVO principle, things like that?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a good exercise if you have to create a lot of different titles or headlines in a hurry, or if you really want to just create a lot for future use. So you would just create 3 columns, subject, verb, and object. Write as many different ones that you can under each column to try and kind of piece them together, just depending on what your need is.
Definitely. Perfect. And now we actually have a tool that I've used before, and then we're actually going to launch a poll here now that we use. It's Portent's Idea Generator. It's a tool that allows you to go in and plug your topic, and they just kind of like regenerate ideas around those topics. And I'll be completely honest with you, 80% of the time they're not going to be topics that you can use, but it's still a really interesting way to get the juices flowing, come up with some ideas that you might not have thought about before. So while I don't necessarily advocate that you run with any ideas that you use during these tools or these automatic generator, they do give you a sort of basis to go off of, and they really help with the brainstorming. So the two that we kind of recommended are like titlegenerator.com, which generates I think like 300, 400 different ideas for you, and then Portent Idea Generator, which just kind of does like buzzworthy topics as you're going through. So the poll that we issued here, we took the topic of headline and plugged it into there. And some of the headlines we got, like why headlines are scarier than dating Taylor Swift, 18 facts about headlines that'll make your hair stand on end, so a few of those. So we issued that poll. Let's see what the results were. Perfect. So it looks like most of you guys like the 18 facts about headlines that'll make your hair stand on end. While this might not have been something you come up with initially, it does hit on some of the topics we already talked about before. While also it wasn't an idea or a topic that you might generally come up with on your own. So using tools like the Portent's Idea Generator or titlegenerator.com are a great way to come up with some topics that you might not have thought about originally. The next thing we're going to talk about is brainstorming distinctive hooks. So I know this is something that we've done at CopyPress in the past. You get like a group of people together who kind of bring different things to the table, and you just brainstorm different ideas that you want to create content around. And this is perfect for if you're someone out there who is looking to create a content editorial calendar. Get a group together who can come up with a list of ideas that you don't necessarily have to create within a certain time frame. You can do a mix of evergreen. You can also do kind of like time-sensitive topics as well. But you get a group together, you brainstorm several different ideas, and then you have this pool of topics and ideas that you can like pull from, ongoing to create on your blog or your website. But what's important when you do get a group together is that you have diversity, right? So if you have somebody, we suggest having somebody who might be a little bit more related to like pop culture and things that are going on in the news. Also have somebody who really understands your blog and your industry. And then also have somebody who is a little bit out there, comes up with some like off-the-wall topics, can really dramatize things, right? So those are kind of the three basics that we recommend doing. Naturally, you guys might have different perspectives, but the whole concept behind it is like get a group together, start brainstorming ideas, and things will come from that. So the first one we have, which is extremely important in the process, is the person who is familiar with your content. And Jen, since you are the one who runs CopyPress's blog, I think this is great for you to talk a little bit about what you do in this process.
Yeah. So when I start with ideas, I try to start, I don't know, a month in advance before I want to order content. I start just, searching some things around, looking at our blog, our website, what's working. We could use Google Analytics. You want to keep SEO in mind, especially for a blog. You think of keywords, you think of maximum length, and, stuff that Google is going to, praise you for. So I'm definitely looking at that, and I have in my office, the client strategist, there's 3 of us, so it's very easy to get quite a few opinions and brainstorms. Yeah. So like whenever I start working on these, we just talk aloud. I get, our other client strategists involved to help me out, so we kind of have a bunch of different ideas, perspectives, and stuff like that coming through. And from there, I also try to look at the what's working well in our newsletter and stuff like that. Everything we post on our blog, we send a weekly newsletter, as you guys know. If not, sign up for it. So every now and then, Daryl, one of our other client strategists that runs the newsletter, he sends me a report about, what's working, what's making the newsletters open, who's clicking on them, who's clicking on the specific articles, what article titles are getting the most reads. So I look at the newsletter, I look at the blog, the analytics there, as well as, I kind of just surf the web. I see what's going on. I look at Twitter, look at Facebook, LinkedIn, see what other people are sharing, see what other people are wanting to know, what questions are popping up, what people are typing into Google and stuff like that. So I definitely spend quite a bit of time of doing that. I definitely break up my brainstorming sessions in a couple of days. It's not just like one day I get all of them out. So it's good to have some ideas, some topics in mind. I keep them in a Google spreadsheet, a Google Doc, come back to it, revisit it, keep reworking it, keep adding either keywords in, seeing what's working and what not. So you're always updating those.
Definitely. So, I mean, it sounds like you do a ton of research before you come up with any sort of topic. And what I know, too, from having talked with you is that a lot of it is very much analytics driven. So we are using Google Analytics. We're looking at click-through rates on specific topics. Interestingly enough, we decided to create the ebook on generating headlines based on an article that I actually wrote my first week working here about the top headlines, like how to write effective headlines, the good, bad, and the ugly. It was one of our most trafficked blog posts on the blog for the 2 or 3 years that I had worked here. Mm-hmm. So Dave said, you know what, we need to revisit this. We need to create another updated blog post. We need to launch an ebook. We need to launch a webinar. Here we are. Yeah. So, I mean, we are very much data-driven with how we create our ideas and our topics. But to that end, you are allowed to have some sort of like creative branching out. And I think it's important too, like you said, you have this doc where all your ideas live, all these topics live, but it's not stagnant. You're in there updating it pretty regularly. You're adding in things to it as well. So I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways I think from this webinar is have some sort of living document that you drop your ideas in, you drop your topics. Maybe it's not something you can get to right away, but it's something you can revisit down the road. So definitely you need to have somebody in your brainstorming session who understands your content, understands your industry, and understands what has worked and hasn't worked in the past, because that's really going to frame where you need to spend your energy moving forward. So besides having someone who knows what works or understands your blog, it's important to have somebody who, is updated on current events. So a topic that is like definitely buzzworthy right now in our industry is trend jacking, right? So it's like latching on to some sort of like current event, creating content around that current event. I know we've all seen it done, especially when it gets around the holidays. It's like, I've seen pretty much every sort of rendition of like, check your list twice type of post, right, for Christmas. So, but it's something that works, it's something people are searching for. It might be able to create more click-throughs, get more people on your website that you might not necessarily be able to target otherwise. So, having somebody in your brainstorming session who's up to date on current events, it's really important. And they help connect the dots, right, for whatever this sort of like idea that you want to create, and then something that might be trend-worthy right now. So definitely have somebody in your brainstormer session who understands current events.
Yeah, on that topic as well, Dave did his podcast, and then it went viral. One of his sessions talks about trend jacking, and it's a great podcast. If you guys want to go back and listen to it, find it on our blog.
Yeah, definitely go check out Dave's podcast. It's pretty incredible. And then the next thing we want to talk about with regards to trend jacking is you have to really be careful when you do this, because there are some topics that carry stigmas, and there are some negative opinions to different things. So one in particular, I know you can see it on here, it's Donald Trump hates organic veggies, so find them at a market near you, right? This is definitely anti-Donald Trump. So if you're creating content around a topic like this, you have to be prepared for some sort of backlash from people who might like Trump, or any other sensitive topics like religion, politics, right, and anything like that. So current events, while it's really useful at generating attention, getting click-throughs, you do have to tread lightly, because you can touch on a topic that might be really sensitive to some people who might become a client of yours, right? Mm-hmm. So then the last person that we think is really important to have in your brainstorming session, somebody who knows dramatic, right? Who understands sensationalism and hyperboles, things like that, things that really generate emotions when people see them, right? Those are the stuff you see on clickbait, and I know I'm probably more guilty than anyone when I see something pop up in my news feed that is like super clickbaity. It's like, I'm very much drawn to click on it, right? And I know somebody asked the question about whether or not it's a normal reaction to feel bad after you click on one of these headlines. And to that end, to answer that question a little bit, right? So the question goes, is it normal for readers or people in general to click on a page and then have kind of a low opinion on that page based on like a clickbait headline? So to answer that question a little bit, I think it really relates to whether or not the content on the page reflects and meets the expectations that were set by that clickbaity article title, right? So if I saw a title that's like, you won't believe what happens, next, it better be something I won't believe will happen. Otherwise, you're right. Like, I am going to have a negative interpretation of that. So Caroline, can you talk a little bit about why emotions are important in headlines?
Yeah, they can be extremely important to help you connect to your audience. That's a great, quick, easy way to draw people in. But you really have to be careful, and you have to deliver on those emotions. Like, you can't just create all this in a headline and then not deliver in the actual article.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most important parts of headlines, and I think people don't really understand that, especially with all the stuff you see on BuzzFeed, Upworthy, and all these other websites that are very much driven by clickbait titles. They don't always live up to the expectations, and it kind of as a reader, I know myself in particular, it gives me almost a negative perception of that website sometimes. So if this is something you're going to do, if you're going to target the emotions, the sensationalisms, you better make sure that the content lives up to the expectations. Otherwise, you're definitely going to leave a bad taste in the mouth of the audience, and they might not click on your next headline. So while it's important to consider, dramatizing headlines and capitalizing on sensationalism, you do have to be careful with that as well. So now the next part is, tailor your headlines to match your audience. And I think this really is something that we do really well here at CopyPress, and it's something that kind of sets us apart, is our ability to really use headlines to get our team of creatives to create content that matches the expectations of our clients and ultimately the audience. So this is where we're going to come up with some actionable tips, some things that we do internally that you might be able to take from. So Caroline, can you kind of walk us through the process that we do here at CopyPress with regards to style guides and really honing in on the site's objective when we're creating headlines?
Yeah, definitely. So for each client that we have coming through, they will fill out a questionnaire for us that's going to detail all the important things, let us know their audience, their demographics that they're trying to reach, their competitors, and a lot of times they'll actually provide some direction of where they want to go with their topics, which is really great. That helps us out so much. So after that, after we put the style guide together, that's what we give to our writers to let them know what direction to go in for the articles they're creating. And then whenever we use the questionnaire to help us generate ideas in-house. So it's a really great process.
Definitely. So then on from there, so we go into researching existing content before writing. So I think this is really important for a client to do, or for us to do as well internally. Mm-hmm. When you're researching other content out there, this really opens up the floodgates with, as far as like ideas. It really gives you a sense of like validation for your idea, right? Mm-hmm. So with the amount of content that is out there on the web, it's really a good idea to go out there and kind of check the ideas, because you might be able to find something that's already been covered before, and once you do find that, it also gives you a resource that you can use in your content to make it better. And another way you can do that is, or another benefit of finding other content on the web, is you can use tools like Ahrefs or BuzzSumo to see what sort of activity that article got. So if you do a Google search, and the first result that pops up at the top, this is something that Google finds valuable. That this is something that a ton of people probably clicked on before, a ton of people probably shared before. So this gives you that sort of validation, like I said before, that this is okay. This is a topic that I should cover. It's a topic that Google values, that other people in my field value. So using existing content is extremely important. It helps, in addition to like finding resources, you can also find other promotional opportunities, right? So Ahrefs is one in particular. If you plug in the URL into Ahrefs, it'll pull every link that drives back to that website. So this gives you a pool that you can use after you create the content to help the promotional side of things, right? So content that you just create for your website alone, it doesn't do it full justice. So you do need to do promotion as well. So when you're in the research phase, when you're coming up with the titles, with ideas, and you find other articles out there, these are some of the things you need to consider whenever you're moving forward with it. To that end, too, you can actually use these other existing articles that you find, not just to validate or to use as a resource, but you can actually improve on that idea. So, for instance, you came across, like, let's say you're searching for dog training topics, you come up with 10 tips to train a puppy. Okay, well, that's great, but why don't I create a better piece of content that talks about 15, 20 tips, right? In addition, you can look at other areas as well when you're finding the content, when you're looking through the content, find areas where you can improve, where you can make your content stronger. So that's really important whenever you are looking for ideas and topics. When you find other articles in your searching phase, see what you can do to improve on it. The next step in the title process that we think is really important is like using SEO, right? So coming up with titles that are valuable from an SEO standpoint. And Jen talked about it a little bit before. We're doing that with our own site. I know myself in particular, I use tools like SEMrush or Google AdWords Keyword Planner to find phrases and find topics that I can use within my general title or my topic that I came up with already, that I know people are searching for. WordPress has a ton of plugins like Rank Checker and Yoast as well that can kind of give you that keyword viability. But what's really important to focus on is, okay, do I have the keyword that I want to rank for, that I want to this article to show up for? Is that somewhere in my title? If it is, it should be somewhere near the front of it as well, because we already know that Google ranks keywords in the front of content more so than in the back of titles. So those are some things that you need to consider when you're coming up with these ideas. Is how is this going to rank? Can I optimize my title effectively? And then to that end too, if SEO is really your focal point, if you're creating content for search engines, it's okay not to be original. It's okay not to be original, or it's okay to be unoriginal, so to speak. So if you do have a keyword and you're worried about, okay, well, I see 10 other results for this same title. Okay, that's fine. I mean, that's a great title. It's optimized effectively. It hones in on some of the other stuff we've talked about to this point. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a title that's already out there. But what you should focus on, if that's what you're doing, is focus on the content itself. Create an incredible piece of content that's better than any of the other results. Use the resources like Ahrefs or BuzzSumo to see who's sharing it, to see who's linking back to it, and go back to them and say, hey, I saw that you linked back to this. I saw that you shared this other post. I created a similar updated topic that's better than that resource. So, you should consider sharing that yourself. So those are some things that you should do as far as like creating headlines, and if SEO is the main focus of it, it's okay not to do something that's buzzworthy, or don't come up with a sensationalist headline. So then the final topic is, what do you do to the headline before you publish it? Caroline, what's the final step in the process?
Well, after our QA process, our internal QA, it's a really good idea to make sure that the title still matches what the writer created. Make sure that it matches with the article, because sometimes it can turn into something that's actually better than the initial flow of the headline before. So it's best to really look it over and make sure it still matches up.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I think that's really important, right? So we've talked about the headlines and the titles throughout the entire process. So, focusing on the W's, the H's, and the U's at the beginning. That's more so about helping you conceptualize what you want the content to be. And then using some of the tools that we talked about throughout the process, using some of the brainstorming sessions, things like that, to take that topic and really create a headline that adds some structure to the content itself. And then finally, throughout the process, what is the content actually about? What is said in the article and the post? Is that reflected in the title well? So if you use sensationalism or hyperbole in the title, does your content live up to that expectation that you set to the audience? And if not, then you should probably rework the title or rework the content. So the editing before you publish it's a crucial part of the process, and I think it's one that I know I sometimes get stuck on whenever I'm creating a piece of content. I was like, I love this headline. I'll write an article, and I'm like, what? The headline doesn't necessarily reflect what I said in the article, but I love the headline. So it's tough to make changes, not just to the content, but to the headline itself. But as we talked about already in the webinar, you need to make sure that your expectations are set with the headline, that you're able to capture the reader's attention, that you're able to reflect and target who you're looking to target. Add call to actions if you're concerned with them making an action. But the most important part of the process is, before you publish it, make sure that it matches the content. So that's our webinar on creating effective titles and headlines. I'm looking through some of the questions here, and I know that somebody asked for us to include an example of the spreadsheet, what it looks like, some of the data and categories that we internally look for in our titles. That's not something we can necessarily do right here on the webinar, so we'll look at all the questions that you guys gave us. We'll try to do a follow-up, maybe a blog post follow-up for you guys. So make sure that you guys are looped in on our newsletter so that you can receive those follow-ups, because we'll touch on some of these questions. We'll include a Google spreadsheet, that kind of replicates what we do internally, so it's something you guys can use down the road. And any other questions that we haven't had a chance to get to in the webinar, we'll touch on those in a follow-up blog post. So as always, guys, I really appreciate y'all listening to our webinar on creative effective titles and headlines. Caroline, Jen, thanks for taking the time to help us out here. I hope you listeners were able to take something away from this. And be sure, like I said, the ebook is going to be launched tomorrow, so go to copypress.com. There'll be a really annoying pop-up that will land on you right away. So go there, download the ebook. It goes through much more extensively than we did here today. And then join our newsletter. We'll follow up with future webinars, the blog post that touches on any questions we missed today, and things like that. So thanks, guys.